Good evening, Beardos. Welcome. It is Sunday evening. I'm Timothy, better known as ProDM, and we are here to do another world building stream. Thanks for waiting, everybody. I had to cram some food in my face before we got started. But you know what I was thinking about while I was cramming food in my face? I was thinking what I really need to do is come up with a dwarven greeting. So that way, instead of just saying hello or welcome, I can say, you know, Mahakaman or whatever the term is. Like, what's the dwarven equivalent of my Govanen, you know, from Tolkien? I don't know. I'll have to think of something. But I like the idea of having something, you know, I always feel like I struggle at the beginning of a stream or the end of a stream to come up with a cool thing to say. But welcome. Thanks for coming. Tonight, we are going to be brainstorming some more about Truethrone. Sup, dude? Thanks, Jose. Thanks for coming. Weirdo Master. I think Beardos is cool. I like Beardos as the name of the people who come and hang out in the chat. Because, you know, we're dwarves. And you have to be kind of a weirdo to want to come spend 2 hours talking to me about very specific dwarven things. But I'm glad that y'all are so weird and want to come hang with me. Yeah, great. We're talking about Truethrone tonight, this is the third episode now that we've devoted to Truethrone because it turns out it's a big topic. I think I kind of naively thought it would only be one episode when we first started, and yeah, that was naive, obviously. But now we're here, and we're going to be talking about levels, I think, what? 4? 4 through maybe 7, if we can really push through. I think it's 4 through 7. So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome. We'll do a little summary. Truethrone is a once a metropolis. Well met. Yeah, right, you're hammering true. I think it is something like that, Jose. I think it's got some kind of a well met, sort of a I think it's got to be one phrase rather than just, you know, I don't think it's like a whole sentence. I want it to be maybe one or two words, but, you know, fair, like hail or well met or whatever. Anyway, so we're working on this campaign called Helm and Crown, and Helm and Crown is a dwarven dungeon delving and political intrigue campaign. And kind of at the center of that campaign is the former capital of the dwarven kingdom of Coombe, called Truethrone. Truethrone was a dwarven city, yes, but it was also the seat of Clan Truesilver, who are the sort of royal clan, the Targaryens, if you will, the dwarves that ruled Coombe for 2,000 years with, as Bilbo describes it, utter surety. However, the big sort of benchmark event of our campaign is that the world kind of came to a rather dramatic end recently. At least Coombe did, 500 years ago, with the Seven Sorrows that plunged Coombe into darkness and endless winter and drove the dwarves away. So Truethrone has now fallen on sort of hard times, and it's been abandoned, and there was all this tragedy surrounding the place. So we have been basically step-by-step building the ancient history of Truethrone, what it was originally intended to do, and then later, once we get all of that done, we'll go back and we'll do basically what happened in this place during the 500 years that its populace was sealed inside. So let's go over. Last time we talked about Truethrone, we finished talking about the guest city, which is the top level. We talked a lot about what I ended up naming the Trove, which is the second level, and is kind of like the treasury of the kingdom, right? The Trove is where the Peer Congress meets in the Chamber of Measures, which is a location inside there. The High Vault is there. There's a bunch of stuff that we talked about. There's a museum. There's a library. We went really in depth on how the legal system and how the legislative, system of Coombe works when we talked about the Trove and about the Chamber of Measures. The giant scales, where people have the votes that are the little, tablets. And we talked a lot about what I ended up calling the Silver Works, which are the sort of industrial, the manufacturing part of Truethrone. Truethrone is built inside of a mountain, so it's this massive mountain that has 6 smaller mountains all around it with bridges connecting to them. But then most of the mountain obviously has been hollowed out. So the first level, the guest city, is on the top, and then below that is the Trove. And then below that, it kind of changes into sort of a donut shape. So you have like the big hollow area of the donut, and then surrounding that in the actual donut part of the donut part, that's the Silver Works. And that's like all the where all the manufacturing and all the crafting and all that stuff takes place. And we talked about its different rungs, and we talked about all these different ideas. We talked about at the very base, there's the anvil, which is this massive literal anvil that they basically use as like a bell to ring out and announce, changing of the guard and changing of shifts and things like that. But then today, what we're talking about is level 4, better known as the Grand Commons. We'll talk about the Grand Commons. We'll talk maybe about the Bastion and the Mine, and we'll see how much we can get done today. So the Grand Commons is basically that empty space, right? This is the donut hole of the 3rd and 4th level that are kind of contiguous with each other. And the Grand Commons is basically the metropolis. It's where like the vast majority of the dwarves dwell. It's hollowed out, but then they have basically, it's like skyscrapers. But what we decided is that because it's in this hollowed out mountain, that it isn't just from the bottom up, that there are also skyscrapers that come out from the sides. So it has this almost like crystalline feel to it, where it's these buildings that are jutting out up, yes, but also from the sides like this, and this kind of crosshatch. And there are bridges between them, almost sort of like Sharn in Eberron, if Sharn was in sort of this 4th dimension. Or 3rd dimension. 4th dimensional Sharn. There's a few things we've talked about in terms of its features. Yeah, right. Alan had that comment last time about the fighting pit. How he wants a fight pit. And I do think there is a fight pit, but I think it's 2 levels below in the mine level. Metropolitan level is the largest one in the city. The dwarven skyscrapers jut from the ground in both of the surrounding walls, creating a labyrinth of towers and bridges and supports. The features we discussed, we talked about the Illuminite crystal, which is an enormous crystal of basically like solar-powered mineral that hovers between 3 or 7 skyscrapers in the middle of the metropolitan level. It's kind of an insult to Clan Brightshard, who's the clan that mines Illuminite and has since lost access to the Illuminite mines. But it's there and it lights the whole place. This beautiful floating sort of lamp, right? I think the way we talked about it is that normally it would have to absorb sunlight, but in this case they just cast the light spell on it, and then it refracts this beautiful rainbow light kind of all over the place. And then, yeah, there are towers. It's kind of in a strange geometric pattern. These stone scrapers of Truethrone, for lack of a better word, defy gravity. These are the dwellings of the Hold's Dwarven clan, each customized by their inhabitants. Gorgeous stonework that creates a kaleidoscope of creativity we talked about. Other potential locations in the Grand Commons that we discussed, and also if you have ideas for this level, the way these streams work is that I'll kind of talk through this stuff. Y'all can just throw ideas into the chat, and we'll try to incorporate them if we think that they work. Great. So other locations we talked about, like, is there a school here? It might be one of the few places in Coombe that would have sort of a university or a school of any kind, right? We talked about the idea of, like, kitchens, a place where the food would be made. And we also talked about the notion of the different levels sort of pertaining to the different gods. There are 6 dwarven gods, and 6 of these levels have sort of gods that have temples located there. So in the Silverworks, the manufacturing area, that's where the temple to Umbor, the god of creation, is, you know. And then in the Trove, the sort of accountant, vaults, offices, bureaucratic area is where the temple to Athad, the god of coins and commerce and trade, is. So we said that in the Grand Commons, where Clan True Silver lives, we would have a temple to Kavish, who is the goddess of community and of stories and of drinking and also of death. So that's kind of what we've covered so far for the Grand Commons. I'm trying to think if there are any other cool features. Oh, there would definitely be transportation in here. So there's one main form of transportation that kind of runs the whole gamut, and that is the stone rail. So the stone rail descends from above. The stone rail is essentially like a monorail, and it's, you know, magical, and it runs the circumference of the main Grand Common. It runs basically the whole length of Truethrone from the guest city all the way down. I think probably to the mines. Maybe it goes all the way down to the throne level, but it definitely goes down through the Grand Commons. I imagine that because the Silverworks and the Grand Commons kind of abut each other, that whatever the stops are that the stone rail makes on its way down the Silverworks, it's the same stop. So it's kind of like they open the doors on both sides. You can either go to the Silverworks or you can go to the Grand Commons. Yeah, it descends from above and shares its various stops with the stops in the Silverworks. This is the primary way. Citizens of Truethrone navigate the hold, boarding the stone rail near their homes and riding it either up to the Trove, down to the mines, or somewhere in the Silverworks. There's also the Throneway, which is an elevator that descends straight from the center. An elevator that descends, basically like a pillar that goes from the throne in the throne level all the way up to the seat, the peak of the mountain, which has been carved into the shape of a throne. A pillar that cuts through the level. The Throneway conceals a secret elevator whereby the sovereign may rise or descend from the throne below to the throne above. Ooh, I like that. The throne below has a cool vibe. The throne below to the throne above. Yeah, cool. Hey, what's up? Dwarven rickshaws. Brewery and distillery. I can imagine the visual of pipes everywhere and boilers just to give drinks to the full mountain. That's cool. Do you think they have like do you think that their brewery, like, I almost like the idea of them having like obviously regular plumbing, but do you think they have like beer plumbing, you know? Because I'm trying to think like they would definitely have their kitchens, you know, that would, because I think all the way dwarven clans work is that like they don't have like restaurants, you know, in the way that we do, and I don't think that they generally cook in their homes. I think they eat very communally, right? Like everyone comes and there's basically like a big cafeteria. So I think the kitchens function kind of like a cafeteria. Can you all see that? Also, hey, what's up, Christopher? Thanks for coming. Yeah, okay. The kitchens function like a massive cafeteria where all members of the clan can come and find sustenance. So dwarven cuisine is kind of interesting. Yeah, I was thinking about that, Christopher. Beer taps throughout the level, right? Like, I think there's something cool about that. So what's weird about dwarven cuisine, and especially as it relates to beer, is that they didn't invent beer. Beer is basically been imported. It's a human good. They've learned how to make it now, and they brew it. You know, a particular dwarven ale is, you know, renowned. Yeah, they definitely have poison. Sorry, they definitely have plumbing. But it was basically imported, and it's like a human good that the dwarves initially in ancient history kind of like shunned, and were like, oh, we don't want this crappy human stuff. But they would secretly order it and consume it in their holds while kind of protesting and saying, we don't want this human poison in our country. But now they've sort of taken it and they've made it their own, and dwarven ale is its own thing. So if they did have like beer, if they had like casks and taps throughout the level, then it feels like throughout the whole structure, it feels like that would be a later thing they would have added, you know? If one of those pipes were to be beer taps, they would also, as we have potable water fountains. I think it's something like that. I think that they're more like kegs than they are like water fountains, but I like that idea that they're like, you can go and get a drink anywhere. Is that better, or is it better to like funnel everybody into the same spot, right? Like, do you want drunk people on the various levels? I kind of think you don't. I kind of don't think you want them to be able to go anywhere to have their beer like in the silver works. Like, that seems kind of dangerous. I mean, they're dwarves, so they could definitely like hold their alcohol more than humans can, but it seems like it encourages that sort of behavior, right? At any time. There's a, so I'm talking about the kitchens right now, but let's think about that brewery, right? Yeah, I mean, I think they experiment with stuff, Jose, in terms of like honey or meat or whatever, right? Like whatever it is it's imported. Like they don't raise bees, and they used to basically drink kombucha. They would drink like essentially mushroom booze, right? It was like extremely alcoholic kombucha, but it was still kombucha. And they'd have now since like tried human booze with hops and stuff like that. So yeah, they might have whiskeys. I don't think that they're really into wine, but I'm sure it exists. There's some dwarven equivalent of it, right? They've made their own versions of these things. So I think mead probably exists in some capacity. Rotating staff of kitchen workers, of cooks who provide regular meals. So dwarven cuisine similarly was like kind of revolutionized by human food. Dwarven food, when it was originally like sort of conceived of in the tunnels before they had much contact with the surface, it's not good. It doesn't taste good. It's all about maximum nutrition. So it's a lot of stuff like cabbage and like high nutrient, low taste. I like the idea of them having like kimchi and like fermented kind of underground plants that they would have like found alchemically the way to get the most energy out of food, but they never ate food thinking it was good. It was always just like fuel. You did it in the same way that you cleaned your room. Like you need to make sure you eat food so that way you can keep working. And it was only with the advent of like human contact that they discovered the idea of like eating for pleasure, right? Eating sugar and these things that taste good, but you don't necessarily need. So I think their culture would be based around this idea of if food is just like a right, it's not a treat, it's not a business, you know, that like any dwarf could walk in at any time and get the food that they need, right? that feels like something that like they would provide to the Silverworks, right? That, like, if you're a working dwarf, then it seems like you don't have time. Do you think they have like big lunch breaks where everybody stops and comes back to eat, or do you think the food is like given to them, right? Like delivered to them? Because that seems a little much in terms of work. Are there heavy duty lifts for them getting into commons? Whatever they get from the outside instead of going the long way down. I think they take the stone rail, you know? Plethora of taps probably come from the holy ale of the temple. Yeah, I do think that that's true, Christopher. Let's talk about this brewery. That kind of seems like where we're at. I think I can't decide. I like the idea of the ale taps, but I worry about what it sort of says about their culture. I think Kavish is all about community, right? And so I think she would want the dwarves to eat and drink together. I think that they have like one central location where they eat and where they drink. It's like a giant feast hall, right? Feast hall. I think what I like about that too is that then it would justify the need for the anvil, that they have like almost these regulated meal times, right? Where like this is the time when the food is made and when it's served, and come and eat some if you want. You don't have to. It's up to you, right? It's like if you were at a college, you know, like in the commissary. I think it's a similar thing where we serve meals at these times, like an army mess or whatever, and come eat them. You don't need to come and eat it, but if you don't, there won't be food, right? Like an enormous complex near the heart of the Grand Commons, where all dwarves, all true silver dwarves, are welcome, where they feed everyone who arrives. The meals are regular every X hours, right? Yeah, you're exactly right, Jose, right? Like, oh, hey, uber cute. That's funny. Is he there with you? That's funny. Definitely, I think that the taps are blessed. Jose says, I imagine them getting beer, then thinking, okay, that's not so bad. And the dwarf that went, we can do better, and created a 5-time distillery. So the dwarf whiskey is, yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. That like they saw humans have this good idea, but they thought humans don't know what the hell they're doing. And so that they're going to improve it, right? Yeah. The meals are regular every X hours. Dwarves are summoned to eat. It's not compulsory. But many dwarves are too busy, right? Hey, what's going on, guys? Many dwarves are too busy. That's awesome that it's like a whole family thing. That's cool. Many dwarves are too busy to stop their working. But it's an opportunity for the clan to gather and talk about what they're working on. You know, I think that if it's Kavish and it's like devoted to her, that it would be all about bringing everyone together, right? Brewery. Yeah, so I think it's like a bar, you know, I think it's like some sort of a huge complex at like the base of it's like the central piece of the commons, right? That like there's all the dwellings and stuff, but right there in the middle is this like I'm seeing it almost like Grand Central Station, like this huge edifice, right? That's like meant for all these dwarves to come in and eat and drink. It's, you know, it's like a dining hall. The brewery is, I think, attached. Maybe it's like on top of it, and that's where they brew it. And they have like the big pipes, right? Like massive structure atop the feast hall, which has some name. Enormous pipes and vats. Vats where the clan's prodigious ales are brewed. Prodigious booze is brewed. I don't know, because I think, Christopher, that was my idea too, right? That like they would bring food to them, but I don't think that's what they want to encourage. You know, I think they want to encourage the dwarves to come down and eat and be with the clan. Like, if it's about Kavish, then it's about community and relationships, and it's like making sure that the dwarves, I think they use it as a means to bring them down, right? I think the dwarves can't stop working and they just go hungry, right? They might come in later or something like that, right? I could see there being like a fourth meal kind of a thing, where if you missed the big meal, then they put out sort of like cold leftovers at a certain point. But yeah, I like the notion that like the point is to stop them. And maybe there are other clans that do it differently like that, right? But I like that if it's kind of devoted to Kavish, the idea of a commons is to encourage everyone to come at once. And maybe, you know, you might come to one meal and not another. Maybe they hold more meals than most dwarves need. It's like an interesting idea too, because like, do the dwarves eat 3 times a day? Do they eat once a day? You know, what is a dwarven meal like? I feel like they're so focused on productivity that they wouldn't be wasting a lot of time eating. You know, I think they would be able to like get the most amount of nutrient from their meal without having to constantly stop for more meals. I think they would see humans eating 3 times a day as being like really inefficient. You know what I mean? Yeah, it'd be anathema for them not to go to communal food. Kind of sin to the other dwarves. I don't know that it's a sin, but I definitely think it's weird, and I definitely think it like sends the wrong message, right? Dwarves who don't come, who don't attend the communal meals, because I think it would be the kind of thing where like they wouldn't know right away. You know, if they have 5 meals throughout the day, but as a dwarf it's only really expected to come to 1 or 2 of them, right? Then you might not be. It would kind of be like, hey, has anyone seen Thorvar? No, he wasn't here last night. I didn't see him this morning. When was the last time he ate, right? Like, I don't think they have to go to every single one, but I think the idea is that you eat with the rest of the clan, you know, are looked on with some suspicion. Sometimes it could be auspicious, because I think I like the idea it could be auspicious, right? That like perhaps they're working on something so marvelous they can't pull themselves away. But it's also viewed as dangerous. Also viewed as dangerous because it isolates them from the clan. Right? They're like, it's kind of a little bit of both, right? On some level, they're kind of like awed by that. How long have they been working? Like, I could feel that be a dwarven thing that they would pride, is like, I worked for X length of time without rest. You know, the dwarves view the word for death and rest in dwarven is the same. It's rej, right? So the notion being that like stopping work to them is the same thing as death, right? They view those as being basically equivalent. But there's this brewery, and I think the brewery up top is like a sacred place, right? The upper levels of the brewery are sacred and are forbidden from the public. The lower levels of the brewery are open to all, where the dwarves drink and celebrate and remember. I think occasional bar brawls. So we talked about this before, that there would be these different, like, castes is the wrong word, but there's sort of like class distinctions among the dwarves. That like dwarves that are makers, you know, craftsmen, artisans, silversmiths, sculptors, you know, those dwarves kind of see themselves as being above or like having more worth to the clan than the miners and the delvers. You know, there's kind of a like an aristocracy and a working class sort of vibe with those two. And so I think every once in a while, because they all meet in the same place, right? There's not like this is a miner bar and this is an artisan bar. It's like everybody is like funneled into the same location, right? Then to me, it makes sense that they would occasionally get into scraps. Like this would be a place where those two kind of worlds would collide. where makers and miners occasionally collide. Yeah, cool. Jose says, in past times, especially with mining colonies, there were 2 meals, and they took from home a small snack to have, mostly hand food, small pies with thick crusts you can throw off if it's too dirty. I mean, big full meals. Yeah, like English full breakfast looking kind of light. Yeah, I do think they're like these huge things where they eat so much, you know? I kind of think that there's like a before work meal and then an after work meal, you know? And I think the after work meal is really more drink than it is food. I think they eat like one humongous breakfast, essentially, right? Like, it's like, here's all the food you're gonna need, and you eat what you need through the rest of the day. So they would, like, the dwarves would provide portions that this is exactly how much food is required to power a dwarf for one day. And they would eat, and then when they get tired at the end of the day, that's like, okay, I've reached the end of my food. It's time to go back to the place, to the feast hall, and drink and tell everyone about what I did today. So I think it's like 2 meals. It's food and then drink, essentially. Yeah, I kind of like that. I wonder if like the dwarven words for those two, right? Like, let's write those down. 2 primary meals. Food is roughly equivalent to breakfast. Like the meal that powers you. The meal that gives each dwarf the nutrients they need to work all day. And it's a thing about like they eat food, like maybe now they've supplemented it with like cheese and bread and, you know, fruit and like things that they didn't have access to before, but historically they eat food that humans can't even digest, right? It's this like super sour, like sauerkraut, you know, vegetables that have been fermented alchemically in these spices and these like, you know, concoctions. Yeah, morning solids, evening liquids, right? That then can sustain them. If a human were to eat it, they would poison them, right? Like humans can't stomach it. It's that cast iron stomach thing that dwarves have, right? Drink. When the dwarf gets weary, the dwarf wearies, they return from work, Fast and the Furious. They return from work and have their second meal. Drink. Where they might eat some, but mainly they drink. Yeah, right? Yeah, totally. It's rice in Japanese. That's interesting. Eat some, but they mainly drink and tell stories about their days, about what they made and what they didn't. So I think it's like, because they can't have everybody in there at once, right? If there's 10,000 dwarves that live here, they can't all be in this place. They wouldn't fit. 10,000 people in a bar is crazy. So I think it's like that there are multiple shifts, right? There's like sort of early morning and mid-morning and late morning for breakfast, and then there's like early evening, mid-evening, and then late evening, you know? 3 shifts for each meal. Early morning, mid-morning, late morning for food, and early evening, mid-evening, and late evening for drink, right? And that might change. I mean, like, they live underground, so their understanding of day and night is probably very different from ours, right? They wouldn't necessarily be thinking like, oh, the sun's going down, so it's time for me to be done. It's just like when they get tired. Okay, cool. I think that's cool. What else is down here? So we discussed the idea of the school. So the way dwarves work, right, is that they don't have formal educations. They basically have like apprenticeship programs. So if you're a dwarf and you want to learn a trade, you know, your father trains you for a certain length of time in their trade, and then you basically try to attract the attention of a master in the field that you want to study in, right? So if you are a stonemason and you want to become, if your father was a stonemason, he trains you to be a stonemason, but you want to be a silversmith, right? That like you would then try to make something when you're proving, you make something that kind of like shows like, oh man, I really want to be a silversmith, and then a silversmith might come and see that and then hire you. So it's all individual based. It's all like masters teaching apprentices. It's not really like big formal institutions of learning. But I also think it's kind of interesting if like maybe Truethrone is like the one place that has that. The only problem with it would be that they would need, like, no one else from True Silver is here. Or sorry, no one else from Coombe can come here. Like, you'd have to be a member of the True Silver clan in order to come to this place. So it doesn't make sense to me that they would have, like, this is the great school for the sort of, like, masterless apprentices if only members of the clan can get this deep into the city. That doesn't quite make sense to me. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but I don't necessarily know that it's a huge thing here. I mean, I think that the metropolitan level is like largely about where people live, you know. Oops. So I think I'm gonna scrap the school because it doesn't quite feel right to me. I feel like I want one more interesting location because I feel like the feast hall and the brewery are kind of one and the same, you know. Yeah, I mean the kitchen's feast hall brewery, that's all basically one location. So if there's not a school, it's mostly like dwellings and dorms and things. It's like where the dwarves live. I gotta find my water bottle. I'm gonna get my water bottle. I'll be right back. But we gotta start thinking about like what else would be here? What else would be down in this level, right? Like beyond just homes and dwellings. We can think about that. We can talk about that as well. Like what are their homes like? But I want one more like cool. Yeah, Christopher says the library, but we have a library actually in the Trove. It's like a patent library. So if you want something done, you come up here at the library. Yeah, a hall of records where designs and schematics are kept and stored. Any dwarf in the kingdom can store their plans here, but many are too jealous and suspicious to do so. So not a library. It's a good thought, though. It's got to be something unique to this level. I'm gonna make my water bottle. I'll be right back. Y'all keep thinking. I'm gonna put the be right back up in just a sec. Okay, be back. Keep thinking. Hey everybody. You missed some Fast and the Furious happening outside. It was pretty crazy. So I had an idea while I got my water. I think there should be a park. Hall of Heroes, Wall of the Fallen. Oh, that's cool, like a monument. Yeah, that's not a terrible idea. Let me write them both down. Small, safe personal labs for kids and material centers like stationary shops. They can get. Yeah, I think. Ooh, yeah. But I think you go down into the mine level to get that stuff. I mean, I think that like the idea of there being like safe shops for kids is cool, but I don't think it would be here. I think there might be like a level in the Silverworks. Yeah. Okay. sort of like child workshops. That makes it sound like children are working there, but they're not. It's like a, yeah, safe personal labs for children. It's kind of like daycare, where fathers. Ooh, yeah, a cemetery wall. That's really cool. I was calling you Kavish, Christopher. Yeah, where fathers can take their children to help them work. Yeah, that's cool. I might want to come back to that idea. So let me write down this. I think there's a park. So the dwarves would have historically eaten a lot of mushrooms. You know, like stuff that would have grown down there. So I think that there's like, it's almost like a farm, right? It's like this is the area where you can walk through it. Maybe it like encircles the feast hall, but it's like a mushroom. It's like moss and mushrooms, right? Where the food the dwarves eat is grown. A park of moss and mushrooms, and underground lichen. It surrounds the feast hall, whatever way of calling the feast hall, on the ground floor. Yeah, so loud. Only Sundays. I don't understand. Sundays at this time, specifically. Unbelievable. And is accessible to everyone, though only the cooks are permitted to harvest from it. So what's interesting about it is that, like, I think you have to be trained as like a dwarven cook to even understand how you would begin to process some of this stuff, like which mushrooms are safe to eat and which ones aren't. You know? So noisy. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's extremely distracting. So like even if you were just like to walk through the park and like randomly pluck up mushrooms, it wouldn't really do much for you because you wouldn't know how to process them to make them edible. But I like that idea, right? It's like a big kind of central park area on the bottom. Great. But let's talk about the like cemetery. So it's not a cemetery per se, because we talked last week about how the dead work, right? But I think some sort of a memorial for the fallen is interesting. It would have to, yeah. I'm trying to think how it would work, because if it was every single member of the clan who had died, it would be absurd, right? In terms of like how many names there would be on there, you know? Because I'm imagining like the Vietnam War Memorial right now, right? Which is like all the names. That might be World War II. One of the American like war monuments is just like names. And I think something like that's cool. They wouldn't have had names for a while. I kind of wonder if it's like faces, you know? Like carven faces in the stone. Sorry. The noise outside is so distracting. I'm trying to think of what that would be. Because I like the idea of that. I just don't know, like, what is the physicality there? You know, where are they building like a big wall, or just like around the garden? Is it? We have these like skyscrapers that jut out. You know, are they on those? Are they on the exterior walls? Is it a place you visit? Because I wonder if maybe, yeah, Kavish is the goddess of the dead, so we don't want to put it somewhere else. I was trying to think if there was like a better level for it, but it feels like this is the one. So there's something that honors all the dead, all the clans dead. Something with carven faces. Because again, I like the idea of it not being names, right? That it's like visages. We have the Hall of Masters up here, which has in the Trove, which has like the works of like the Deep Masters, who are the kind of like more important members of the Peer Congress, the upper class members of the Peer Congress. But that's like their works on display. I think there's something cool about like thousands of dwarven faces like peering out, you know. Could be that, yeah, they're like carved on the outer walls. Carved on the outer walls of the chamber. There are tens of thousands of them, seeming to watch over the... Yeah, I kind of think faces is maybe what I want to do. Because I think you get like something about like kind of like the eyes of J. Alfred Prufrock. Thanks for your idea, Uberq. Right? Seeming to watch over the rest of the clan. It's kind of spooky if they're like all over the walls, winding their way up. Because I like the idea of like these are all the dwarves that have come before, you know, like in. But it's like if it's circular, or more likely it's probably geometric. So maybe it's like an octagon, right? The kind of donut hole, and then just like winding their way up and around the interior of the structure are these faces. That's kind of neat. Yeah, I'm just trying to picture it. Is that too spooky? But spooky is maybe honestly what we want, you know? Because like if you put it in just like one area, then it just wouldn't fit, you know? If the point is to say, look at all the dwarves who have fallen, then you would want it to be just gratuitous. Although, you know what? We've done that somewhere else, actually. That's what I'm thinking of. It's in another, we've done the faces in another location, but they could do it in both. We'll keep it for now, and I'll decide what I want to do. But I like that notion. The park, the cemetery, that's more of a feature, actually. It's less of a location. Put it under features. Okay. I kind of think that's good for the commons, you know? Let's maybe talk about these homes. So the way that like dwarven like dwellings, the way the dwarven dwellings work is that each dwarf in the clan is given a sort of base block of stone where they're permitted to make their home. The dwarf, you're basically given like an address, right? Like essentially their address. The dwarf uses that base block to construct their home however they see fit. And then when they die, they pass on the home to their apprentice, who can then make whatever changes they wish to the home. So, you know, they're all different. Like they might say, okay, here's, you know, we have a stone scraper or whatever, and then like this quadrant, you know, maybe it's broken up into 8 squares or whatever, and each square, each block is like one dwarf family lives here, one dwarf family lives here, and then like they design it to look like whatever they want. So you get these like impossibly intricate carvings and porticos and doorways and things. Like they all redesign, and imagine they're all kind of like glued together, right? And you get them thrusting up to these like amazing. Sometimes they will. You have like a bunch of dwarves all decide, okay, we're gonna make this all look like a hand holding a hammer or something like that, right? So a bunch of them will work together and say, okay, it's to the greater good. But sometimes you get them all looking completely different, right? In some areas, many dwarven homes have conspired together to create enormous sort of works of art from their architectural facades. I spell architectural. Thank you. Facades. Luxurious Roman baths. Ooh, a bath is kind of cool. I mean, we do have that they have like, there are some clans that are like known for their hot springs. They would definitely have plumbing. Let's maybe put that in there. Features. I think this is generally true. Plumbing. We have established that dwarven holds have like basically operative showers. Each home has certain amenities, including plumbing. So like bathing is a thing I think you do privately, but you eat together. So like no dwarven home has a kitchen in it, right? Yeah, let's talk about that idea. Let's get rid of it as a feature and let's put it under homes. So what does a dwarven home have? Features of a dwarven home. It has plumbing and either for baths or showers. Depending on the dwarf, right? You know, they could decide what they want in their home. No kitchen, as dwarves. Yes, you're exactly right, Christopher. The idea is that each dwarf, they have kind of like a Marxist sort of communist structure where each dwarf is required to put in a certain amount of time in the mine, right? And then however much time they put in the mine is how much material they get out, right? And so when they get that out, a lot of it goes to the clan, but then they can use that material kind of on their free time. No kitchen, as dwarves dwarves are encouraged to eat together. Yeah, no heat. You don't think so? You don't think that they would need it? No central heat. So many bodies in the enclosed environment. Keeps them warm. Ventilation. You think that's magical? I mean, it doesn't really matter, but like vents, airflow. Obviously they would sleep there, you know. It's also we described this too, that like the decoration is something that you generally do when you get married. So like an unmarried dwarf tends to keep their home, doesn't make many changes to their home. They will often wait to consult their spouse about the redecoration. Redecoration. It's traditional to keep some memento or design constraint from your master. So like if your master installed, you know, pillars, if your master was a goldsmith, they installed golden chased pillars in your home. You keep them as a means to honor your master. Great. I think that that's pretty good for the commons. We've been talking for an hour. I feel like that's great for the grand commons. Let's move on. Okay. Oh, I want to talk really quickly about inhabitants. So there would have to be like basically another profession that are these cooks. A group of dwarves who, a group of like, yeah. I mean, basically just like specifically masters that whose focus is food. Masters whose focus is food. They work here in the feast hall instead of in the silverworks. Okay. Yeah, personal offices where they keep personal projects, blueprints, and ideas. Laundry. That's interesting. Yeah, I think they would wash their own clothes. Personal workshops. I think it depends on the dwarf, right? own pet projects. Yeah, okay, great. Let's move on to the Bastion level. So basically we have the guest, the trove, the silver works, makes like a donut with this thing in the middle. And then the level below this is the Bastion level. So the idea here with the Bastion is that it is like the defensive fallback. This is where the dwarves, if the mountain is breached, if it's a really bad situation, all the dwarves can retreat down into this level. I think it's relatively thin, but it's extremely well defended, right? I think the Bastion is where sort of the vast majority of the military power resides, is there, but I also think that it's largely kind of left alone, right, during its I don't think people usually go here very often, unless there's some kind of a disaster. I think it was constructed later as a means when the dwarves realized they had no good defenses in Truethrone, that like they're not nearly as well defended as they thought they were. But I think it has kind of like a bunker mentality more than like a fortress mentality. I think, it's a lot of bottlenecks and stuff. So let me describe like the concept of it. The Bastion is where, in the direst of need, the dwarves can fall back into and protect themselves. More of a nuclear fallout shelter. Oh yeah, movable bulkheads, that's cool. Shelter. Where than a true fortress. The Bastion is impregnable, cramped, and militaristic. Movable bulkheads. So I like the idea of like bulkheads and barbicans. I want to think about like how do you get into it, right? In order for it to be defensive, yeah. There's this weird thing where like I think that the stone rail that descends down doesn't go into it. I think the stone rail goes around it. That the Bastion is smaller, right? Like, and it's immediately below the commons. And I think that it's got to have like either 1 or 2 access points, because you have to be able to get into it either if you're above, if you're in the city, or in the silver works, or if you're in the mines, you have to be able to kind of like bifurcate and go in there, right? So I feel like I'm trying to think of how do you get into it, because I don't think that the stone rail should lead to it. I think that's like a weakness. I think the stone rail like goes around it. Right, so if it's you have the commons and the stone rail winds around the inside of the commons, then I think that the Bastion fits inside the commons like cylinder, and it's smaller, and the stone rail winds around it, which to me says that there's like a gate that you have to go through, right? That there's only one entrance. But if you're a miner and you need to get in there, which is mining is the level below, how do you do that? Is there one above and below in terms of entrances? That kind of makes sense to me, that if you're below it, you need a way in. If you're above it, you need a way in. Yeah. 2 entrances. Oops. Upper entrance. Lower entrance. Accessed from the Grand Commons. The upper entrance leads down into the Bastion. Because I think the idea is that you need to be able to flee in both directions, right? So if they're facing an attack from the mine, if something is coming up from underground, then they can shut themselves off here, and then they can have the civilians or the miners flee up into the city. And if they're being attacked from above and coming down in, then they can seal it here, and then like, have people come out into the mines. So like either way, yeah, you kind of need a cork on both ends, right? and then access from the mines. The lower entrance leads up into the bastion. Extremely thick walls. Almost impossible to drill or dig through. I think, yeah, like the entrance has like triple layer airlock kind of a thing, right? Triple airlock to enter. Yeah, but I think the point of it is that you're right, that if the stone rail does go around it because it has to access the mines, but the point of the bulkhead, the point of the bastion is that the dwarves like no one can get into it, right? Like they might be able to be outflanked, that's true, but it's more like this is a place that the dwarven people, that the citizenry can go and hide in while the dwarven warriors fight, right? It's not meant to be a fortress, it's meant to be a bunker. Because if you've gotten to this point, right, like, and presumably they can fight, they're, it's just weird because it's vertical, so it's not like a fortress on a hill where you would walk up to the door. It's like if you're attacking it, you're either coming from above it or below it, which they can probably build into its defense in some way. The stone rail does bypass it, but I don't think that either way you'd have to, because I don't want the stone rail to go into it either. That feels like you would have to have like a big opening, a big weakness, right? I think it goes around it. I think the point is to contain the people. Maybe people can move around, like enemies could move around either side of it through the stone rail, but I think the point is you can't get in to get at the actual dwarves themselves. It's like the final end of need place they go to. So talking about the airlocks on either end. The middle airlock is a literal airlock where they can magically pull the oxygen out and potentially suffocate whomever they seal within. So we talked about this before, that like they have a fire suppression system in the Silverworks that's magical, and rather than like being a fire extinguisher, they just magically pull all the air out of if there's like ever a fire in the forge, they just pull all the air out and automatically extinguish all the fires, right? So I think they have a similar thing. Ooh, lead-lined walls is cool. Yep, I like that. Lead-lined, or like magically lined, right? Like to prevent scrying or magic from piercing. Thank you, UberQ. Through. And I think it has like some means to supply people, right? That like magically there's either, basically the like equivalent of an ever full aquifer, right? There's like some natural means inside there to endlessly supply people with food and water. Probably it's like bad food and bad water. It's probably like plain food, but they could withstand a siege indefinitely, right? Some magical means to feed and water the dwarves that are trapped within. Create food and water. It's something like that, right? That like they can. I like the idea that you cannot pry them out. They have to either be, you have to storm in, right? Or you have to get them to willingly come out. That like they've designed it in such a way where they cannot be truly besieged. They cannot actually be taken out of there unless they choose to be, I think that's neat. In terms of locations, I think it's kind of a blank level. I think it's like largely living quarters in there. It's definitely a temple to Zamut. Living quarters. Enough space for all the dwarves of the clan to dwell uncomfortably for a prolonged period of time. Uncomfortably for a prolonged period of time. And again, like, I want you to think of like a fallout shelter, right? Like, it's these like dark, unadorned passages. Everything is lead lined, as you said, so it's kind of bleak and like nothing pretty about it, right? Like, it's this pure kind of business part of the dungeon. Many thousands of dwarves could dwell down here. So it's like a smaller version of the commons, a cafeteria where magically provided food and water is given to them. It's passed out to everyone. The food and water created is tasteless and inefficient for working, but sufficient to keep everyone alive. You know, gruel or whatever. An almost infinite number of people alive. There's got to be like basically a fortress on either side, 2 fortresses, the upper fortress and the lower fortress, where garrisons of soldiers can be stationed and fight against attackers on either side. Right, so there's like an upper and lower garrison to protect both doors. I don't know exactly how it's structured, because again, I think it's the one choke point, right? I think maybe they're separated, so it's like if you get in, then you'd have to fight your way through to get down to the other end. Yeah. So then one of the locations in the Grand Commons would be the entrance to the bastion level. Bastion entrance, where dwarves flee to, a stout citadel, where dwarves flee to when the hold is under attack. So it's like somewhere on like the bottom of the Grand Commons that the dwarves can get into, and it takes them down, right? And the airlocks. Yeah. So there's one on the top and there's one on the bottom, right? That's cool. The Temple of Zamut in the middle. I think like the heart of the bastion. So if like both of the two gates are, if either the two gates are taken, the Temple of Zamut is the final bunker, deep in the bastion level, guarded by secret entrances and inaccessible except in the uttermost end of need. Yeah, I think that there's like a big, again, we're going with the donut analogy here, right? That like fortress, and then all these living quarters, and there's this one big block, this one basically negative space in the middle that looks like it's solid lead, but there's a secret door in it that leads inside to the Temple of Zamut, and that's where you go if like, oh god, you know, you can cram everybody in there, but they can't sleep in there. It's just sort of a like the final place that you fall back to. The final place where the dwarves fall back to if they're boxed in on both sides, which has never happened and never will happen. But like, I like the idea of like what this speaks to, that they're sort of like sheer extreme paranoia, right? Temple, yeah, should have doors that only open from the inside. Yep, that's great. Doors that only open from the inside. Yeah, that's cool. That also makes me think that there needs to be like a dwarf in there, like all the time, right? That like, because the doors only open from the inside, you would have to always keep a dwarf in there, right? Or a construct. Yeah, a construct inside. An iron golem, maybe. Whose task is simply to open the door when the dwarves need it opened. I think it's a construct, right? I like the idea that there's somebody in there at all times, but I think it sort of works stronger if it's this because yeah, we could have there be like a person that's stuck in there, but then again, they need food and stuff like that. I think the dwarves would just make it be a construct, like an iron golem. Okay, cool. So inhabitants would include, well, let's do a transportation one. The stoneway wraps around it. Transportation. The stone rail wraps around the bastion, but doesn't enter it. The only way into the bastion is through either of the two gates. Inhabitants, they would have basically like a standing garrison. I want to call them like the deep guard. The deep garrison. I like garrison. Deep garrison. So this is what's interesting. Each clan has what's called a clan guard, which is basically like the military force that each clan can bring to bear. Usually it's all the dwarves of any sort of fighting capability are in the clan guard, but you usually have like a certain knot of them that are like the professional soldiers or the commanders. Like in case of a real attack, you could get everybody, but most of the time, it's some small portion of the population that work kind of like as defense, but also sort of as police and keeping the order. So I think there would be like, this would be the headquarters for the clan guard of Clan Truesilver. Clan Truesilver also has the crown guard, who are basically like the army, but I think that that's different because they have a little bit more of like a broad purview, right? Like a foreign purview. They're not necessarily as worried about defending Truethrone. They live in Stone Sister, which is like the big fortress that adheres on the side. So these are basically for the internal security forces of Truethrone. I think they're headquartered here in the Bastion. I accidentally almost closed OBS. That'd be a problem. The Deep Garrison. This is the headquarters for the Truesilver Clan Guard. What's interesting is that we've also established that the guest city, if you scroll up here, has a fortress called the Gatehouse, which is a bridge that connects to Stone Sister. So that's held by the Crown Guard rather than the Clan Guard. The Clan Guard, in this case, would hold this lower one. So I can see there being some kind of a rivalry between the two, right? There is a rivalry between the Crown Guard and the Truesilver Clan Guard, which are technically different things. Which are technically different bodies, but with a few overlapping duties. That goes under the inhabitants. They don't always... They tend to butt heads. The Crown Guard believes, perhaps rightly, that it is the superior military force, but in order to prove that, they need to basically invade they need to invade Truethrone, which they've never done. Okay. So again, I don't think that it's very populated. I think that the dwarves that live down here are, you know, members of the clan guard and are kind of sort of like preppers, right? Like they have that kind of energy that they're always ready for attack, and there are relatively few of them. There's maybe 100 clan guard that are full-time down here. But for the most part, the bastion level is basically ignored. You know, there's not a lot of people that come down here. Okay, we have 45 minutes. It would be really cool if we could push through and get both the mine level and the throne level done. Okay, so let's talk about the mines. So again, we have the mountain, and one thing we're kind of trying to do with these different layers is not to hinder them too much to just like stacked Oreos, right? So we have the guest city, and then we have the trove, and then we have the donut, right, with the silverworks and the grand commons, and then the bastion under that. And then the mine level, I think, has, similar to the other levels, has kind of a base block, but then I think it stretches up the sides and down and all around, because the mines kind of go in all different directions, right? It's like this big spider web out, all these roots that shoot in all these different directions. So the mine level, in addition to the main hub, located directly below the bastion, the bastion level, the mines stretch for miles and miles beneath Truethrone and the surrounding mountains. I think they're called the Silverhorns, and the surrounding Silverhorns, where the clan's dwarves mine precious mithril found nowhere else in the world. So yeah, again, I think they have this like central depot. I like the idea of calling it a depot. I don't know if they would have any other things. And one of the things in the depot, Alan's not here, but there is a fighting pit. So yeah, it's like all these branching tunnels that go off in all these different directions, right? And I think that they are, it's like this big snarl of minecart tracks, right? Almost like a, ooh, that's kind of cool. Like the nexus for every mine cart, underground river cascade, where they clear the ore they mine before sending it to smelt. That's cool. Yeah, that's neat. Underground river. Ooh, I almost want to see if the Truethrone passes through there. So the Truethrone is a river that runs through Coombe. It translates as the mother's milk, and the idea is that it's like pure and clean to drink, even though it crosses like half of the country, right? Like from one end to the other, you can always drink it, and even though it waters a bunch of different holds, and it's kind of like the Nile for the dwarves, right? So, and I think the Truethrone goes through, or it comes close to Truethrone. Used to clean and clear the ore before sending it upwards to the silverworks. The depot, again, I think it's similarly kind of like the feast hall. It's like a big, huge complex, right, where all this stuff is brought in, is where all the ore, all the raw ore is processed. Maybe it's like a refinery too, right, and refined. Once this is done, the ore is sent upwards and into the silverworks. So I don't think they have like a tavern down here, because again, they would be encouraged to take it up and into the feast hall. But I think they have, hey, what's up, David? Are there areas already with magma hazards? A mine seems like a good place for those. I don't know. Can you have magma if there's no, if it's not a volcano? Like if you just dig deep enough, is there just like liquid rock down there? Because it's not True Silver is not built on a volcano. But I do like the idea of that. I'll put magma under features. What do y'all think? Temple to Ignon. I think that instead of one temple, there are many dozens of temples to Ignon, scattered all throughout the mines. Whenever the dwarves found precious minerals, they would erect a small shrine to her. In order to pray to Ignon, you must walk some way into the mines and find one of her shrines. I like that. So I like the idea that they would drive all of the dwarves up and into the feast hall to get them to drink, but I do think they have like a rowdy fighting pit area. I don't know where that would, like, because I feel like they have to drink to do that, you know? So is that like a thing that they do illicitly? Do they have like moonshine, like mine shine down there? That they drink and they get into these big scraps? I'm trying to think. Because again, I like the idea of having this big kind of like rowdy central area. I think it's a refinery, yes, and it's a depot where all the mine carts come in. But I think the mines kind of stretch out in all these different directions. They don't want them to drink unless they're back in the feast hall. The idea of mine shine is kind of interesting to me. That they would find something to brew and drink. What kind of gross dwarven moonshine do you think that they would have down there? You know, if it's not just standard ale. Because I like the idea of saying they're supposed to do this, right? They're supposed to go back to the feast hall, but the miners don't always do it because it's too much of a pain. We talked about them having plumbing. Do they have like a big communal bath down here? Is there like an area where they get cleaned up, or do they go back home? I think they don't clean. I think that they mine all day and they get gross and sooty and covered in dust, and then they go right from there to the feast hall, right? And so they're like, the point is that they're all gross. Actual root beer, right? Yeah, that's funny. I'm trying to think what it would be. Because, like, mushrooms is basically what their regular beer is made out of. But I guess they could, like, find it in the mines, right? And then crush it up and make it themselves. Yeah. So I think there's basically, like, an unregistered... It's like a speakeasy. There's a miner's bar. A well-kept secret. Oh, yeah, it's, like, somewhere in the mines where the dwarves would all gather and drink and fight each other. If they move it occasionally, whenever it gets found, whenever the clan guard rumbles it, but it's a poorly kept secret, right, among the miners. Gambling occasionally happens here, and a wretched or a rancid mine shine is brewed by the dwarves, by the miners, from whatever strangeness they scrape from the rock. Yeah, so who knows? It's kind of like a grog, right? Like, I like that. And it's floating and it's like always moving around in the mine, right? Like, they have it there for a while and then it'll get busted and then they'll move it somewhere else. Yeah, that's cool for locations. I don't know about magma. I mean, I think magma is cool, but I don't know what necessarily they would do with it. Inhabitants are the miners. Nobody lives there, right? But, like, miners. The lowest tier of dwarven worker. The miners are rough, rowdy, and fiercely independent. I also think one of the features is that they can, like, collapse tunnels they can... All the tunnels are rigged. The tunnels are rigged to collapse should something bad, natural gas, magma, monsters suddenly bubble up. There's like something about the way that they design them, right, that makes them like easier to bring down on their heads. Yeah, there's tons of mine carts that lead every which way. A massive tangle of them back in the depot. Right, they lead off in all these different directions, they come around. I almost think it's like a roundabout, structured like a roundabout, where each dwarf has to wait on cue to dump their minerals. It's kind of a location, but there's a number of accountants down here. Oh, we talked about this too. I forget. I need to write down the name for it. But the term for like accountant, the idea we had with the Trove is that they are basically like unmastered dwarves that never achieved the rank of master for whatever reason. They have a tendency to kind of go into like the accountancy. And the term that they use is they're kind of mockingly called page masters, which I like because it's about paper and they wouldn't care about paper, but it also is a reference to that shitty old movie from like the 90s, right, with Macaulay Culkin. Yeah, so there's a number of page masters down here. And they have some name in Dwarven, but who handle the yield. Oops. How much did each dwarf get? How much does the clan have? Etc. Oh yeah, we talked about there being a vault down here. That there's like the lower vault. We have the higher vault and like the lower vault, the deep vault. Where the clan's true wealth, its minerals, are stored deep beneath the depot. The vault contains all the silver, stone, granite, mithril, and whatever else the dwarves mine from below true silver. Unlike the high vault, which is meant to be seen by visitors and like masters, the lower vault is highly secretive and only the page masters have access to it. No dwarf save the king. Ooh, yeah, I like this. The vault is compartmentalized. Can you guys still see that? Yeah. The vault is compartmentalized in such a way. That no one page master knows precisely how much wealth the clan has. Only the master, I think it's master of records, somebody, master of yields maybe. I think it might be yields. Who's basically a member of the Septagon, has any idea, and they report this to the sovereign. Yeah, I think that's cool. I feel good about that for the mine level. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot going on down there. We can maybe spruce it up later as we need to. But I kind of want, we have exactly a half an hour. I kind of want to push forward and see if we can do the throne level and just get that done. Okay, let's start with the throne. So the throne level we don't have too much. I think Jose several sessions ago said make the throne room mounted in a pillar surrounded by the mines. Like they mined around the throne room, and now it's like a mini tower inside the mountain. So I think that's kind of cool. I mean, I think it's a cool idea. I don't know if that quite works with what we have for the mine level. It could be, we could switch them, right? We could say that there's like a tower and that they've mined out this huge chamber and they have all these different areas, and that like the depot and all those things are underneath the ooh, what if we do this to make it a little cooler? So again, I think it's like kind of another big hollow space. The top one, the one that's the boy, my brain is just so tired today. The one that's above is the Grand Commons, and then there's the Bastion, and then I think we do another big negative space. What if the depot and everything is all in a stalactite? So it's like clinging to the bottom of the Bastion, and then all the minecarts and stuff like come in on bridges. Even the Truethrone, even the river can come in on an aqueduct, right? And it flows through that area. Yeah. An enormous stalactite, yeah, that hangs from the ceiling of an enormous open cavern. All the minecart tracks and even the river reach the mine level via bridges and aqueducts that the dwarves have built. Yeah, that gives it just like a little bit more distance. It's not just like another band of the mountain. It's got its own kind of thing. So we do that, and we say it's this big open space, and then the throne level is below that, right? So like stalactite like points down to the throne. You could do an Erebor thing, which I always really liked in the design of Erebor in the Hobbit movies, where like the throne is basically a stalactite that comes down into one. I think I might do that in another hold. But yeah, aqueducts. Let's see. The depot hovers over the throne level below. Okay. So I think the idea, yeah, is that they've originally mined all around this area. So what if there is, ooh, yeah. Let's do this. Okay, so the throne level is a tower. Is a tower contained within the mine level that rises up from the floor below. The hollow level, the level was hollowed out by the mining. When the place was founded, and they stumbled on a block. They stumbled on a vein of adamant. So adamant on Dune, in our world, is different than it sometimes appears in other settings. Adamant is the only kind of stone that the dwarves can't work. They don't know how, right? Nothing that they design or build, even with magic, can even chip adamant. So they will find it sometimes in veins or deposits that are weird and irregularly shaped, and they view this as a blessing. Finding it as a blessing from Ignon, the goddess of the earth. A small one is a small blessing. A big one is a bigger blessing. So I think it's like a pillar of adamant. It's this like formless, rough, like rocky thing that like rears up from the ground, and then on top of it they have basically made a throne. I kind of think it's cool if the throne is sort of made of adamant. If you do like an Iron Throne thing where it's sort of a throne, it's not exactly one, but they have kind of turned it into a throne for the king to sit on, or the sovereign to sit on. The idea being that like it's uncomfortable, but they sort of make it work anyway, right? And then they've like built other structures onto or around it to kind of give it this weird tower feeling. Like the sovereigns, like apartments and chambers are all buildings that are adhered to this like upthrust of adamant that shoots up. And maybe it was just like a vertical vein, but they've chipped away all the other stone around it, and they have these like supports that keep it up, right? Yeah, it was mined top to bottom, I think. I think it was probably a little bit of both. Truethrone was built a little after the fact, so they like had another capital, and they decided when the True Silvers lived in another place, they decided when they were going to sort of become the king and like make this the royal clan and make this play, or when they were crowned that way, they decided to move capitals and make a much bigger, grander play. So yeah, I believe it started from the top down. They would have probably gone looking for mithril and found it and then said, okay, this is a bigger deposit of mithril. This is where we will make our seat. But that's a good question, David. I'm not sure. But I love the idea of it being this big vein of adamant. Because you could say that like they picked this spot because of that adamant. You could do it the other way around. They were exploring in the mines below and they found this and they said, okay, this will be our peak. Or this will be our capital. I kind of think maybe that makes more sense. Okay, features. So a vein of vertical adamant around which the dwarves constructed their entire capital. At the summit of the adamant tower is a rough approximation of a throne. It is here that the sovereign of Coombe sits and holds court. Yeah, that's cool. Structures and buildings not actually adhered to the adamant surround it. The apartments and offices. Yeah, I think that's right, David, that it's assigned to settle there. Offices of the sovereign. Right, so like that's where the Septagon meets. It's all that stuff. I'm trying to think like what is this like big negative space? Like it was definitely like carved out by the miners, right? But now what is it? Like, is it a place where the people can come? Like, can they come down here to this level and like hear the sovereign speak? Is it just totally empty and a huge echo chamber? You know? I don't know. Like, I think it's huge and it's like vast and empty. Huge, vast, empty space. Because there's something weird to me about like maybe it's good, but like the notion that, you know, the sovereign rules Truethrone and Coombe from this kind of place of darkness down here, this like big empty cavernous space. Like my instincts is that that's totally wrong, right? That they would feel very alone. Yeah, I think you're right, David. I think it is largely just to like show how cool they are. I think like the idea of it being this big empty space, like I think that reinforces that like there's something weird and lonely and dark and dwarven about being the king, that like you can't see your kingdom from down here. Maybe that's like why Durzov built the chair on top of the mountain, is that like, yeah, this is this holy site, this adamant, but no one can see you down here, right? You're like the heart of the mountain. Yeah. Where sitting on the throne is a weirdly lonely thing to do. You can't see, you do not see the kingdom, you do not see the people, you are in total isolation. Like, and I think that they can like counselors and people like come down and meet with them there, right? Like I think that like the adamant comes up and it almost forms like a palm, right? Like the throne is here and there's like a big flat area where the counselors and everyone would come in and talk to them. But when the sovereign is seated there, you know, there's all this negative space around them, but it's empty space. So it like echoes and it has this like big, you know, vacuous kind of feel. I think that's neat. So how does that work? So obviously you have the throne. The sovereign has what's called basically like a small council called the Septagon, which are 6 other advisors that come and usually from each of the other elder clans, and they come and they advise the sovereign on various different things. Does the Septagon meet up there by the throne? I kind of think the Septagon has a chamber in sort of like the tower, right? Like at the summit of the Adamant Tower. Let me think of a name for that too. The throne is where the sovereign receives guests, visitors. Like, can you come all the way down? Does the crown entertain visitors this deep in the yeah, I think you have to, in order to meet with the sovereign, you have to be invited. One must be invited. I think there's something about like the crown versus the throne, right? That like, I think that the sovereign can come up and meet with people, right? Like kind of like the king leaving the castle, right, to go on like a royal progress or something. Like I think the sovereign, while wearing the crown, can move around the city and still function as the sovereign. I think sometimes the sovereign comes to the meals, right, while wearing the crown. But I think that in order to, yeah, I don't know what that relationship is between the throne and the crown. Because I like the idea that like the dwarves don't view this as being like that so one thing about dwarves is they don't have servants. They don't have people who directly serve. So that means that like the sovereign does their own laundry, right? Like they do their own tasks. They live kind of in royal seclusion, which I think is sort of neat. I just don't know like what is the function of the throne down there? Who goes down there to meet them? Like it could be visitors and advisors and stuff, but it feels weird to me that they would have access. Like how do you get all the way down? What is the transportation like to the throne level? Transportation. Does the stone rail come down here? Or does it stop in the mines? I kind of think it stops in the mines. I think it stops in the mine level. There is no easy access from the mines above to the throne below. I'm trying to think, like, I could see if it's a stalactite, right, that maybe there's like the stone rail comes all the way down. Yeah, guards, lots and lots of guards. I think that the stone rail comes down and there's a depot. Hey, Shadowrunner, thanks for coming. There's a depot in the stalactite, right? Like where they get off, like the final, basically the last stop of the stone rail. And then I think from the stalactite down, there's a set of stairs. And it winds its way down to the base of the base of the chamber, right? And then you walk from there over to the adamant tower, right? That rears up in the back of the, yeah. So there's a staircase that descends from the stalactite down to the floor. Or maybe a bridge. Yeah, that spans across the vast empty space. David's got an interesting question here. Dwarven guards or golem guards? So the Crown Guard, again, is like the king's army, the sovereign's army, but the Crown Guard is based in Stone Sister, which is like the big fortress outside, right? So the Helm's Deep. So the notion of the sovereign being alone down here is really interesting to me. Like, they would obviously have their family and stuff, but the notion of golem guards, that like they don't even have real guards to protect them. They have these constructs. And connects with a staircase that climbs the adamant pillar. Which all these things I'll have to come up with the names for, but right, it's just like the idea. Inhabitants, guards. Guards. Okay. Are they dwarven guards? Are they golems? Does the sovereign reign in friendless splendor? I think them being golems is interesting. We have golems in the Bastion, so it kind of feels weird to do it again, right? Because I feel like we've done that. But I feel like if you get this far, right, you have to go all the way down. So like, could someone, a member of the clan, could just take the stoneway all the way down? What prevents them from just shooting the king with a crossbow, right? Yeah, it does feel like it has to be obviously some sort of guards. The early ones were dwarves, the most recent ones were all replaced. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what we did with the Gulyavari, which we've done. We did constructs last week, so like I'm hesitant to say it's constructs again. It doesn't make sense for it to be undead. I think it's a phalanx. Yeah. Oh, we talked about this. Yeah. So I think that the sovereign has a phalanx of guards akin to the King's Guard in A Song of Ice and Fire. Usually from clan Oathshield, which we've established. It's basically like the guard clan that dwells with them, with the sovereign down here. I think there is like a profound loneliness still to being the sovereign, that your family and these guards are all down here, right? I think that the Septagon meets here, right? There's a room for that. A room for the Septagon, or the Septagon meets. Septagon. A chamber where the Septagon can meet in privacy. Maybe it's like magically warded against eavesdroppers. Yeah. That makes sense. There'd be like royal apartments. Chambers where the sovereign and their family live. But the whatever these guys are, they're not the Crown Guard, but they're the Phalanx, and they're basically the Secret Service, right? Like, they constantly hover around the sovereign and make sure that they're protected at all times. They're highly trained. They're meant to be like, they're trained as a unit, kind of like the Unsullied, and they're meant to be the greatest bodyguards in the kingdom, right? Their family live. Otherwise, very ordinary, right? Very ordinary. Nothing particularly wealthy or ostentatious down here in terms of their living conditions. So we have talked about a secret level, that beneath the throne. There's also the throne way. Maybe there's just one. A shield guardian. That's kind of cool. I'm not opposed to there being a golem, right? A golem, a shield guardian that's bound to the... Ooh, that's kind of cool. That's bound to the sovereign. So once upon a time, a gift from Zunda Kun. Once upon a time, there was a dwarven wizard. There's basically like one great dwarven wizard in Coom's history, sort of the Merlin figure, right? Who appeared briefly and kind of dabbled in politics and then left. And I like the idea that this wizard maybe made a shield guardian for the king at that time, a king named Havhed the Hammer, and that then this medallion, right, that controls the shield guardian has been passed down for every generation since. So it's the same one, and there's some suspicion like maybe the shield guardian secretly still works for this supposedly dead immortal wizard, right? Yeah, I like that it's like this heirloom. So you still get the crown guard, right? Do they have clone magic as a super last resort? These dwarves do seem super protective. I think clone magic is a little past them. They're not very arcane in that way. There's like plot stuff I can't necessarily get into about that, but it's a cool idea, David. I don't dislike the idea at all. But they do have a secret level. So beneath the throne, I think beneath the adamant pillar, like there's a tunnel that leads through the pillar. To a secret level where the sovereign can retreat to. It's a temple of Hemdall, the god of secrets. Yeah, so right, the idea is that like each one of these levels is devoted to one of the gods, except for Hemdall, because Hemdall is untrustworthy. But the lowest level secretly has a temple to Hemdall. Hemdall is the kind of person that you pray to keep them away, as opposed to like to ask for their help. So if you're trying to hide something, you pray to Hemdall and say, if I let you in on this secret, then no one else needs to know about it, right? Like, it's no longer a secret if you and I know this thing. So I think there's like a small shrine to Hemdall that's hidden in a lower level beneath the throne. And maybe there are more things down there that I'm not going to get into for secrets. But yeah, that's cool. And then the throne way is a... was I talking about the throne way? Yeah, throne way. The throne way, I think, then is like based in that staircase. So a secret way for the sovereign to ascend to the peak and sit there in their splendor. Sit there in splendor. An elevator hidden in this pillar that rises up through all 7 levels and eventually deposits them on the peak. Okay. Did we do it? I think we did it. We have... Oh, I love that these are each like 1 page exactly. Bastion level, Mines level, Throne level. That's it. Those are the 7 levels of Truethrone. We did it, everybody. Nice job. And with like 6 minutes left. That's perfect. Okay. So we have the guest city on the top where people come into the city. You know, foreigners and dignitaries. Everyone is welcome. The second level down is called the Trove, and that is where the Peer Congress meets, which is kind of like the legislative body of Coom, but it's also where all the taxes and all the wealth is accumulated. It's where all the accountants work. There's a patent library there. There's a bunch of stuff in the Trove. Below the Trove, we have 2 different levels. We have the Silver Works, which surround the central area, and the Silver Works are kind of the manufacturing level. It's all these different rungs where all these different things are made. Sort of the raw stuff is below and the more refined stuff is higher, right? So you can take something from the bottom and work it all the way up to the top. In the center of that, we have the Grand Commons, which is where all the dwarves live. There is like a great feast hall there. There is a park and a garden. There's a floating illuminite crystal that illuminates everything. Beneath that, we have an anvil in the lower level of the Silver Works, and that anvil rings out kind of like a giant bell. And then below that, we have the Bastion level, which still doesn't have a name yet, but we'll think of a name. And that is kind of the bunker where all the dwarves flee to in cases of extreme emergency. And it has 2 entrances, one from above, one from below. It's lead lined, and it has a secret shrine to Zamut at its heart. They even have airlocks that they can like suck all the oxygen out of if people are trying to come into it. And then below that, we have the mine level, which is built in a huge stalactite in this great cavern beneath the mountain. There's all these bridges and aqueducts that lead mine carts and water into the stalactite. It's a huge depot where they do all the refinery and stuff like that. The mines then stretch all the way around into all the nearby mountains and all the way up through the mountain. And there are many different secrets that are hidden in the mines. Below the stalactite, there's a spiral staircase that leads down to the floor and down into the throne level, where on a basically upthrust pillar of adamant is the throne. And adhered to that pillar are these chambers where the sovereign can live, including a secret chamber hidden underneath that is a temple to Heimdall, the god of secrets. And I believe that that is the entirety of Truethrone from top to bottom. Yeah, it's crazy. So that's great. So we spent 3 sessions doing that, right? And now we have one more Truethrone session we're going to have to do, not next week or the week after, but we'll do basically like a history where we're going to go and say, okay, this is what happened at the end of the beginning of the Sorrows, and then for 500 years this place was abandoned with its population trapped inside, and what kind of rapture style happened to it over all of that time, right? What happened to the people? What about the monsters that got in? What systems are shut down? What does the place look like when the characters first arrive there? Yeah, but here's the deal. We are off next week. It is November 1st next week, and I will be out of town. But I'll be back the week after that. I think it's the 8th, right? Exactly. What inhabits it now? That'll be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be the kind of the piece to resistance for this Truethrone arc we've been doing. So next week, next Sunday, I will be out of town. That's the 1st. We'll be back on the 8th. I think we're probably just going to do a simple one. We might just do a monster stream because I really like making monsters and we haven't done it in a while. So we'll probably do a making monsters one on the 8th, and then on the week after that, the 15th, we'll be back and we will wrap up Truethrone on the 15th. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I want to give a shout out to a couple people. Thanks to Christopher and for Jose, who were sort of here first, and all your guys' early ideas. Thanks to David, who showed up here towards the end, and Shadowner. I really appreciate all of you coming in and helping with your creativity. So much of this campaign at this point is based on y'all's suggestions. I want to remind you all, if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe. If you're watching this on VOD, please subscribe to the channel. You can follow us on Twitter at XPWebSeries. And if you really like what you're watching, we could use your support on Patreon. I know most of the people in the chat right now are supporters, but if you're not, or if you're interested in supporting us, you can visit us at patreon.com/XPWebSeries. There should be a link in the description down below. And if you join us there, you'll get not only access to these streams, but you'll get access to all kinds of extra bonus content. Great. So we were talking about this at the beginning of the show, that I'm going to have to come up with some kind of a greeting in Dwarven. I'll have to think of what the farewell is in Dwarven as well, so I can say that here at the end. But we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and I will talk to you then. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Mm-hmm.